5 weeks to bring this march to fruition. Today, we stand in solidarity with all those whose lives have been impacted by the scourge of violence, which has invaded our schools and torn apart communities and homes.
So many of us jumped in headfirst with little understanding of just how life-changing this experience would be. We all united under the obvious notion that we had to do something. We are so grateful to have had this opportunity, and we hope our work today makes you proud.
We want today to be about the survivors of these preventable attacks, to shine a light on those student activists who have been marching long before us. Today, we want to tell stories not just about gun violence in our schools, but in those communities and neighborhoods who have faced these challenges for years. We recognize you, and we expect our media to recognize you as well. Our activism, our vote to amplify the message that we are marching for. If you have not registered, this is what we ask of you. This is what you can do.
There are 2 of us up here, but there are 100 standing with us. We'd like to thank our team of volunteers who have been working before school, after school, late night video calls at 10 o'clock, weekends, and everything in between.
Thank you. I am reading the speech which my son, Gina's dad, is giving right now in Parkland, Florida. So much of it relates to Parkland specifically and to Florida, but most of it relates to the world and our students, all of our students and our teachers. School should be a happy place for learning, and a safe place. My son begins, "Good morning, my name is Tony Montalto, and my daughter, Gina Montalto, was the victim in the mass shooting at her school on February 14th. I find myself in the unfamiliar spot speaking to all of you today. I prefer the background rather than center stage. In the wake of this tragedy, our family has been blessed with an amazing amount of support from this community. What works is by compromise. Works in families, in marriages, in commerce with the buyer and seller. Our system of government, with its inherent checks and balances among the 3 branches, depends on compromise to work properly. The only way to get the change we are demanding here today is for both political parties to stop blaming each other and to come together in an agreement that makes real change.
Scott Beagle, Martin Duque-Anguiano, Nicholas Guaret, Aaron Feiss, Jamie Guttenberg, Chris Hickson, Luke Hoyer, Kara Loughran, Gina Montalto, Joaquin Oliver, Elena Petty, Meadow Pollock, Helena Ramsey, Alex Schachter, Carmen Shentra, and Peter Wang. Let us all pause for a moment of silence to honor these affected.
You threw my city away. You tore down the walls and opened up all the gates. You burned us down. You burned all of the bridges and slowly let us drown. But you're not good enough to sound. We'll get back up again. You may have hurt us, but I promise
Everyone deserves to be safe.
We won't go to school in fear.
Together we have the power to change the world.
They're not gonna knock us down. We'll get back up again. You may have heard us, but I promise we'll be stronger. And
We're not gonna let you win. We're putting up the fight. You may have brought the dark, and we will shine the light. You're not gonna knock us down. We'll get back up again. You may have hurt us, but I promise we'll be stronger. And we're not gonna let you win. We're putting up the fight. You may have brought the dark, together we will shine the light. Oh, we will be something special.
From Meghan, Mom, don't come. And her dad said, you can't keep her away. And my daughter, the one caught in the building, hearing gunshot answers, I know, but I don't want something to happen to her too. The fear you feel when you cannot protect your child and see they are safe will change you forever. You would exchange your life for theirs in a split second, no questions asked. We as parents suffer in silence. We don't want to show our fear, but nothing will ever be the same for us. No parent or child should ever have to live through what the families did that day, February 14th in Parkland. Look, I never truly understand what my children have lived through. They have grown up with active shooter drills and lockdowns in elementary, middle, and high school. They have lived with the fear that someone is going to hurt them since they were 6 years old. These kids tell us we don't understand, and you know what? We're right. We never will. We may never truly understand, but I can promise you, we stand beside you, and we will help you get your message out and be heard. Please lead the way. To quote my daughter Emily, it's time to shut up, sit down, and listen. And now, it's with great pride, I introduce my daughter, Meghan Bonner.
I was in my math class on the second floor of the freshman building, also known as the 12,000 building, when everything went down. I was on the second floor when I heard the first couple of shots. There had been a rumor going through the school that there would be a drill that nobody knew about and they would shoot blanks to scare us. I looked at the kid next to me, seeing as I was the second one closest to the door, and told him to close the door, which was the procedure for the code red drills. I then started texting my friend because I didn't want to scare my parents. He was already evacuated by West Glades, he told me. I kept myself calm because the kids next to me were freaking out. I figured if everyone starts freaking out that nothing would get done, and I knew I needed to stay calm to help in any way I could. We shut off the lights and ran to the corner of the classroom. My teacher peeked his head out of the class to grab any kids in the hallway, and luckily the kid who just gone to the bathroom made it back. If he was a second later, he'd be laying on the ground outside of our class. I ended up texting my parents, I don't know if this is a drill or not, but someone with a gun is in our school. They later told me their stomachs dropped as they read that message. My mom then texted me that it was real and told me to stay where I was. I was convinced that nothing would happen to me because the kid I told to close the door was standing next to the door. I remember him telling us that he wouldn't let the shooter in no matter what. Another boy joined him. I felt protected by two 15-year-old boys who promised to do anything in their power to keep my class safe. Then the shooter banged on our door trying to get in as he ran up and down the hallway. Those boys who never moved an inch. I can't remember much else I was feeling in that moment because I was in shock. It had caused me to black out. One of my friends and a fellow JRTC member, Elena Petty. We called her Junior Petty, Little Petty. She always had a smile on her face and always seemed happy, like nothing could bother her. She was such a nice, kind-hearted kid. I remember waking up the next morning and feeling so empty. Parkland felt empty. I remember seeing on Snapchat that she was missing, and I kept thinking that she would be okay and they would find her. But the next morning I found out that she died, and I couldn't stop crying. The adults failed us, and now 17 people are dead. 14 kids I saw every day from elementary school to middle school and then high school that are never gonna live the life I have the privilege of living. This will never leave me. It has been over a month and I still can't wrap my head around what happened that day. There's so much more that could have been done to prevent this. I want to see change. I don't want to feel unsafe in school anymore. I want to see change.
We're scattering everywhere, and if you saw a person on the ground, you weren't sure if they had tripped, were dropping for cover, or had been shot. To this day, anytime I hear helicopter blades churning overhead, it brings me back to that night. And the sound of that never-ending rapid fire that turned that concert scene into a killing field. As a friend and I squatted behind an SUV, waiting for a break when we could run from the scene, I was overcome with a feeling of helplessness. There was nothing I could do, nothing to fight back, nothing to stop what was happening. I could have had 100 guns to use, and I wouldn't have been able to stop anything that the bad guy did. He was certainly not well regulated, but he had compiled an arsenal worthy of an entire militia. And yet, as far as I know, until he broke that window and started firing, he had yet to break a law. In the coming weeks and months, my friends leaned on each other for support and celebrated as our friend recovered. For me, though, the survivor's guilt carried on, and I felt like I wanted to do something, anything, to prevent this sort of terror from ever happening again. But again, I felt helpless. Because every time one of these tragedies happens, our immediate reaction is to lash out and turn to blame. We retreat to our ideological corners, dig our heels in, speak in absolutes, and an already tense situation and conversation turns even more toxic. And I am guilty just the same. We say thoughts and prayers without actually thinking or praying. We talk about mental health without actually understanding what that means, how we address it, and how we create smart gun policy around it. We talk about gun control without proposing real, clear, sensible, effective policies that will not rid evil from this world, but may make it a lot harder for it to be manifested on the innocent. We talk about a culture of violence without an appreciation for the fact that any steps we make toward changing our collective attitude towards guns is going to take generations before it gets better. But our generations are working on that. The Parkland kids have shown that and spurred that movement to prevent this environment from becoming the new normal. As I watched that Parkland situation unfold, as a community rallied together, I felt a shared empathy, an understanding of what that horrifying experience is like, and the intense motivation for action that follows.
Colleagues, when gunfire erupted. Together with them, we hid 18 9-year-old children while listening to 154 gunshots ring through the halls of our little elementary school. I had hoped that the deaths of 26-year-old children and 6 of my co-workers would have been enough for this country to decide that something needed to change, but it wasn't. Today, led by you, our nation's youth, we will send a very clear message to our leaders in Washington and in state houses across the country that we will not sit idly by while our safety, the safety of our families, and the safety of our communities is put at risk by the dangerous agenda of the gun law. I am marching today to honor all victims of gun violence. While mass shootings like the one I survived and the students and educators we joined from Parkland survived, and they get the most media attention, it's the day-to-day types of gun violence that often go unheard. Families across the country are torn apart when guns are used in suicide, domestic violence incidents, and in city violence. I march for your children, I march for my children, and I march for all of our lives. Gun violence shatters communities, destroys families, and ruins lives. Regardless of the color of your skin, the type of community you call home, or your sexual orientation. My life my family, and my community will never be the same. Every day, there are more and more survivors as 96 more people die by firearm and hundreds more are wounded. The ripple effect of each shooting is becoming so widespread that those ripples are beginning to touch each other. I have listened to thoughts and prayers of people all over the country for the last 5 years as Americans are murdered in their churches, in their schools, at work, and at home. I'm so glad that you are all ready to fight, to join the fight to end gun violence once and for all. The children at Sandy Hook were too young to speak for themselves after their 6-year-old classmates died in 2012. But many of them are joining their families and the students in Parkland and young people across the country who are standing up to say enough. It's time for common sense gun legislation. As a survivor, I know firsthand what the Parkland survivors are going through. Allow this to continue. This is a moment of reckoning. For years, the gun lobby and our elected leaders have pushed the guns everywhere agenda. Let's see where that has gotten us. We have a gun homicide rate of 25 times other developed nations. This is a uniquely American problem. It's time to change the conversation about gun violence and put the safety of our families and our children first. Yeah! By joining us today, you have said that you will add your voice to ours. We will no longer watch from the sidelines as our elected officials do nothing. We need to be engaged in order to hold them accountable. Welcome. We are so proud to have you join us. Together, we will make history. Getting involved is as simple as being here today to start. Let's make this the moment our country begins to cherish our lives above the gun lobby's agenda.
Sick and tired. And I'm Jackie-Rowe, and I'm the co-founder of Harlem Mothers Say Stop Another Violent End. Is Harlem Mothers in the house? I lost my 2 kids to gun violence. So this day is certainly close to my heart. I couldn't bring back my 2 kids, so I certainly wanted to make sure another mother, another father, another family will feel the hurt and pain that I have felt. So today, we all lift our voices, and I am so proud of y'all young people! Was shot and killed on January 29th, 2013. Nza-Ari and her friends, now listen to this, founded an organization called Project Orange Tree. And that organization educate you about gun violence.
On a personal level, but hopefully this speech will give you a little bit of insight to my gratitude for each and every one of you all's participation here in New York City and across the nation. As Jackie mentioned, I am one of the co-creators of the Wear Orange movement that occurs on June 2nd of every year. That also happens to be my friend Hadia's birthday. So we celebrate and we commemorate her lives and all the other people's lives who have fallen victim to the gun violence movement. I'm Nza-Ari Khepra and I'm currently a senior at Columbia University. Originally, I am from the South Side of Chicago. During my junior year in high school, my classmates and I were violently forced to grow up faster than anyone should ever have to. On January 29th of 2013, my friend Hadia Pendleton was shot at a park near our high school and later pronounced dead. Hadia was a 15-year-old volleyball player, honor roll student, and majorette who had just recently performed at Obama's second inauguration. She had dreams of becoming a pharmacist because she really, truly always wanted to make sure that she was giving back to the people around her. She always made sure that everyone around her felt genuinely happy and secure. She was a sophomore who already had such a mark on this world, and she should have continued to be able to create change for decades to come. While Chicago's gun violence is notoriously known throughout the world, even most people from Chicago don't understand the complexities of it. It's often labeled gang violence. But Hadia was not in a gang. And many of the young children around Chicago are not in gangs either. College students, and so many more people being murdered in cold blood in places that are meant to be safe. We've seen our lawmakers care more about people's perceptions of their rights than people's safety at all. But seeing this crowd here today gives me hope that we're moving in the right direction. All of the youth who have taken a stand against the NRA in the past few weeks are inspiring Americans across the nation. We will no longer let our stories end with guns. We must not, and we will not go out of, we must, and we will go out of our way to protect children's lives, even if the people in power will not.
My name is Delaney Cleo, and I may not have survived a mass shooting, but I feel so deeply connected to this movement. Not only as a youth activist, a student that doesn't want to be afraid when I go to school, but also because I too am a young person affected by a senseless act of violence that changed everything for my community. At 3 years old, I lost my dad and 2 uncles on September 11, 2001, at the attacks at the World Trade Center right here in New York City. My friends, Jess, Katie, Dawn, Lindsay, Sam, Jesse, Nicole, and Chelsea stand up here with me today. They also lost their parents that day.
That were lost. But we don't need any more martyrs. We need justice, and that starts here and now. I want you guys to remember that gun violence is not a new issue. It's an issue that plagues everyday communities and inner cities. It affects Black and Latino people disproportionately. I also came here because I lost my father to gun violence when I was 8 years old. And this is my little brother right here. He was still in my mother's stomach when our father was shot and killed. Young people, we are the catalyst of social change. There will be no movement without us. You are never, listen to me, young people, you are never too young to stand up for what's right. I've been doing this since I was 13 years old and I'm now 17. stand up for what you believe in, and never let anyone silence your voice, because your voice matters, and we are powerful. The people united will never be divided. We have nothing to lose but our chains. We have nothing to lose but our chains. Fists up. It is our duty to fight for our freedom! It is our duty to fight for our freedom! It is our duty to win! It is our duty to win! We must love and protect each other! We must love and protect each other! We have nothing to lose but our chains! 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 Ashe, thank you.
Guns down! Guns down! Guns down! Now, I'm gonna introduce you to Guns Down, Life Up as they come up. Thank you.
Let's be more us. Can't touch this up. Don't pull the trigger now. We're moving kind of reckless. Off a little from less. Actions outrageous. It's time to turn the pages of this book. Stop letting guilty conscience off the hook. Time's up. Check in, don't run. 'Cause this just ain't fun. No. So many mothers out there scared, afraid of losing daughters and sons. So let me stand up, let me wake up and find a solution. If I'm not safe for love, don't pull the trigger. We've been going through this a long time, fighting for our lives, judging through blind eyes, victims of hate crime. Don't pull the trigger now. Stop. Guns down, life up. We need more love. Let's be more us. Can't touch this us. Don't pull the trigger now. Bodies laying cold in the street. Families with nothing to eat. Empty hearted, tainted souls.